Hi everyone, calling this meeting to order. It's a very exciting meeting about the Board of Selectmen, but this is the first item on our agenda, and that is the promotion of a police officer, Jeff Lynch, to sergeant, and the swearing in and pending ceremony. And I just want to say how delighted I am to have all of you here with us. So I'll turn it over to the chief.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having our department here for this big moment for Jeff Lynch and his family, and also for the department. So just to tell you a little bit about Jeff, he's been here since 2022. So he's coming up on his 4th year this coming spring. But prior to that, he was at Boston PD since November of 2006. So total, he has about 20 years on the job. He actually started the academy when I graduated the academy, so he and I link up. So, you know, I've only been here 2 years, but Jeff, it was obvious to me that Jeff has some good qualities, a lot of which will make him a successful supervisor with the police department. He's very bright, he's caring, he's empathetic, he can talk to anybody. He's got that ability to just sit and chat and make friends real quickly. So I'm very happy to say that after the process, which wasn't easy, we had a written test, and then in addition to the written test, there was a panel of 5 outside police officers, 3 chiefs, a deputy chief, and a lieutenant. So Jeff, I think overall score from the written to that was, in my case, was in the mid-90s. So he crushed it. So he's a very good candidate, and I'm very happy to announce his promotion tonight. And if we could have Felicia come up and do the swearing in. Pretty hot.
I'll read this to you and I'm ask you to repeat it back to me, okay? I, Jeffrey Lynch,
I, Jeffrey Lynch,
do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution
do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
the Constitution and laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
the laws and ordinances of the town of Dover,
the laws and ordinances of the town of Dover,
the rules and regulations of the Dover Police Department,
the rules and regulations of the Dover Police Department,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform the duties of police sergeant in and for the town of Dover,
faithfully perform the duties of sergeant in and for the town of Dover
during my term of office,
during my term of office,
effective January 27, 2026.
effective January 27, 2026.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I apologize, I forgot to mention that Jeff's wife Anna is here, along with some of his siblings and their children and loved ones, as well as his former partner from Boston PD is here as well. So thank you all for coming, and we'll do the pinning ceremony.
A lot of pressure over here.
Yeah, it's not easy that bad, sure.
So what I'm going to adjourn our meeting because this is a whole lot more exciting, and we'll do some picture taking for all of you and you enjoy. So, but congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Jeff did out. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
You want to come up?
Yeah, we can wrap up. This. Want to get one with the ED? Yeah. Thanks, appreciate it. Yeah. Good job, Scott. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Sal. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good rest of the night.
Alright. I'm not practicing these in-person meetings, so now we're gonna move to citizen comments, of which I don't see any citizens. Oh, any comments, guys? Alright, so we're gonna move on, and, the next item on the agenda is just the presentation and discussion about the preliminary budget, which we presented to the board last Thursday, right? We got some good feedback on the presentation. We talked about this being a working process. It was the starting point. There were many placeholders and things that are in there. But, you know, the bottom line is our finances are flashing. Yeah. So we really do need to proceed with caution as we think about this year and the upcoming years. So that's what I said. Right, I let my go through.
Yes, we can just do a quicker version. So as Robin said, we just kind of want to set the stage, the outlook for the budget season. Just to our bearings, this is kind of where we are in the process right now, or at least when we did this Thursday. It was the 22nd. The warrant committee is currently scheduling individual departmental budget reviews for February 9th, 23rd, and 25th. That is a little different from the last several years, where not every department came through and presented their budget. We thought this was a really good idea. One, I think it's just a good practice, and it's something that I would call best practice in most communities. And then two, as you know, we have a lot of members of the warrant committee that haven't met all our department. They're really quite interested in what departments do, so we thought that would be really helpful. And the other thing I'll note is the warrant committee has set March 9th as the open hearing date. That's earlier than years past. The hope there is that it gives less or more leeway to produce the blue book once the final hearings are done and they're doing their recommendations. So just kind of make sure I point that out. Because we talked a little about that, budgets are a reflection of the community, what it values, what it holds important in trying to balance, our important items. So, preserving town services, supporting and retaining high quality employees, maintaining high quality schools, and obviously limiting our tax bill. And Robin stole this from her. This was a nice little slide just to show that we are under a squeeze or a yellow light as we're dealing with increasing personnel costs in terms of salary and health insurance. Personnel costs makes I think about 62% of our budget, so it's a big driver. We're trying to maintain our services. We have increasing capital needs as a result of frankly capital that just been put off for many, many years. It's caught up with us, and we're now trying to balance that. And then, while we're very effective and aggressive about pursuing grants, there's a lot of uncertainty in that. So we're trying to balance all that again, all within our 2.5% of revenue growth.
And we talked a lot about the work, and this is not a unique situation for us.
No.
Every time
Yes. So what's the
escalating costs beyond 2.
I've seen two of them stories how many times.
I was at the MMA Connect 351 this weekend, and that was a sort of theme going through the whole meeting. That the constraints of Proposition 2.5 are really causing lots of towns to struggle, and that an acknowledgement from all the political leaders that the real money is going to towns, or the towns are able to utilise, has dropped in real terms significantly in recent years. And so that's a serious problem.
Our governor just announced, 30 million supplemental to go to the 351 cities and towns. So,
yes, she announced that just before, but she started the meeting.
but 30 million is a drop in the
It is, that's not anything like what's in the
And we're, one of the questions we're facing in the week, it's like the town portfolio we're looking at $15 million everywhere. With the field, we've also dealing with coach. Sherborne is hoping not to have an override, but they have a gap that they need to, they're over. So they're really.
right, yeah.
And so, everybody is trying to do what we can to continue to provide services, but
Well, the state aid doesn't keep up to 2.5, and inflation is higher than 2.5.
which is exactly what.
You do not have to be a mathematician to figure out the problem. So,
The other thing I found interesting in your presentation, Mike, was a parallel to the challenges on the capital side. And that seemed to be the critical area here, so we're going to have to really look very closely at all capital expenditures in this coming year, because we can't have everything at once. And I think the other thing that I've sort of learned over time is that we recognise that our budgetary practices were not really as they should be, in the degree that we deferred a lot of capital expenditures over years. And now we're in a situation where we have not really much choice on a lot of fronts. We have to actually spend money because the existing capital infrastructure is just not up to it. But I think the other part of it is our ambitions were to try and do that as quickly as we possibly could. But it may well be we have to be a little bit less ambitious this year, just to be cognizant of the budget constraints and so forth.
Right. No, I appreciate it. Well, we'll be talking a little bit about that. I think you said it, it's just like, look, I think, finish the comment, which is, we're in this position because we deferred for so many years. And an easy gut reaction now is, capital is too much, let's defer. And it doesn't solve the problem, right? It just grows, it mounts, it continues to exist. Not deferring just because we're going to push it way down the line, but to be more strategic and ensure that we can afford and find a good path. And again, we're hoping soon we'll have some of the funding mechanisms suggestions from the Collins Center to our capital that help us. How do we fit this in so we don't keep pushing things off?
Right.
But obviously, we need to afford it. We figure out how to fit it. So
It also wants and needs. And you're going to have some tough prioritization through this list. And citizens and departments are going to have to understand that a want, when you have a need, it's a want gets deferred. And if, hopefully that will be a handleable process. But, so I don't think the taxpayers are going to want to pay for $5.9 million of capital all the way.
fair enough. So we just did a quick review of revenue forecasting. So again, this assumes 2.5% plus some growth to maintain our existing lending capacity. One thing we noted is that new growth is very conservative. That's set by the Board of Sessions and $100,000. And we can talk a little bit later. We'll go through some of the budget levers that exist. But we think that is certainly a lever to have that conversation with the assessors and given the past actuals, see if there's some additional room there. As we know, state aid is now coming to fruition. It's usually set late January, early February. It doesn't make up a big portion of our budget, but it's an important number.
And it increased by 3%, so
That's what we're estimating.
But isn't that what the governor said as well? He was going to give 3%.
I believe that's yeah. Local receipts is another thing we'll keep an eye on. We use the 5-year average, more conservative versus the 3-year. I think that's appropriate. But again, we'll keep an eye on that. And then you'll see some use of free cash, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What that includes currently is the offset to the community center debt, which was the Board of Selectmen commitment when that project was approved. The first payment of our turf field debt includes a placeholder for some unpaid bills. And then $1.27 million to fund special articles. So it's the OPEB contribution, general stabilization, climate action plan, and master plan. And then includes a certain fund to reduce the tax rate as we do free cash policy. So.
And just, Michael, go into this, just a couple of things here. Chris contacted the actual level to understand where we are with respect to funding, because looking at the Dover report, we may be really close to the target within center ourselves, but we want to make sure we're making the report right, and then understanding where we are with respect to the regional OPEB. And so for the next term of the budget, we're also going to have the balances about the stabilization funds. And Chris and Molly were going to be working on an estimate of where we believe cash is going to be, so that we can feel comfortable using that $3 billion given, the other thing we're committed to is maintaining finances so that we will continue to have. So again, those were open items that we really looked at.
Yeah, there's nothing new, but it's the same levers every year.
Right, but I think, it's been a while since we've really seen what is in the stabilization funds and what those liability balances are, so it's good just to see
Oh,
where we're
information
at.
is key, absolutely.
And then, looking at expenditures, we'll go through, in the next couple slides, more specifics, but the warrant committee had asked departments to try to keep 2.5%. What this does not include, we backed out additional personnel requests, and I'll talk about those in the next slide. So what you see here does not include the additional personnel. It does include some contractual items, things like that. So we did do those in per the warrant committee's guidelines. And I'll always defer to Robin to note this, but you'll notice the asterisk in the region, the out-of-district funding was moved from Chickering budget, the Dover local budget, to the region. And it's funded net of the circuit breaker, and that was a request from, I believe, the state as part of reviewing and auditing the school financial statements. As you may know, Dover, I think it's I don't know if it's literally the only one, but the only one I'm aware of that fully funded the costs in our budget, so we're very conservative with everything that was reimbursed back as free cash. We're now basically being asked to look at every other community which is funding it the way that is proposed here.
So in my conversations with Dawn, circuit breaker funds are completely separate from all school funds. So they have circuit breaker accounts, which are used by the state, and the circuit breaker account is always under the region, and there was some accounting gymnastics that were done to use the funds from the chicken budget over to the region to cover the expenses there. And the state is having a really hard time validating what we were doing, all these gymnastics, and it took them a lot of time, and they basically said, we have to do these reviews in order for you to qualify for grants, and what you're asking me so that we can certify grants going forward is move the costs associated with kids that are of age and belong in the region to the region and do those things. So, I talked a little bit to Dawn about our concern that ultimately we would be put in a position where there wouldn't be enough funds and we'd have a special town meeting. So what she was going to do, so the state law allows you to keep up to 1 year of circuit breaker funds in your circuit breaker fund account. So our last circuit breaker fund is somewhere around 500,000, but she was going to keep that 500,000 in the Dover circuit breaker fund of the region. Those accounts are also, so that could be if a new kid comes in, or if circuit breakers fund, we can have that as a cushion. So she was going to keep that as a cushion. These circuit breaker funds are reconciled quarterly and then they're reviewed by the state annually, and she was committed to giving us those quarterly reconciliations so we could see the ins and outs of the fund as well as the annual certification, so that we can feel comfortable that the funds are flowing through the Dover circuit breaker account, the Dover population that gets funded.
Do we need to redo or amend the regional agreement? Because in the regional agreement, it says that Dover will carry the kids K 3 through 22, and Sherman will carry their kids 3 through 22.
And we're still carrying our kids. I mean, it's no different. It's just their circuit breaker is accounted for by town. No. So it's not part of the regional agreement.
Okay, so
Kids.
there's no need to redo it. I just
And
have
she
one.
and
So it
she
comes
has
out
the
in the wash.
treasure, right, and she has the treasure, it's gonna look like the treasurer, it's gonna look by the Commonwealth, and,
Dawn would be happy to explain how I spent an hour on the phone with her, and the way we did accounting for it was accounting gymnastics, because we were forcing it, Dover was forcing it all to the Chickering budget, but the regions paid. So we had to get the funds from Chickering to the region to cover those costs, because the Commonwealth always recognized those kids coming out of Dover circuit breaker at the region. So we're just kind of simplifying the process with the Commonwealth, which was their request.
The only thing that we need to note both this year, so the 500, and then years going forward, is this is one of the main mechanisms that replenish free cash, and it's no longer going to be there. So from a budgeting standpoint, we just need you.
Right. At the end of the day, we're in the same position, because we got the free cash in, and so we put the budget in gross, and it got netted by the free cash. Now we're just netting the free cash, and when we do our free cash projections, we need to understand that's not coming back because the budget is not right. And I mean, you can see that. I mean, look at the school budget, it's up by 22%, and that's because it's net.
There's a short-term budgeting benefit to this decision. There's a long-term free cash. We have to remember.
Right,
Yeah,
it's
it's
net.
just
So at the end of the day, it's a philosophy, and psychologically, we need to understand that now it's coming back from free cash, it just influences budget.
On the broader sense that the whole free cash structure is changing now, we're setting up reserve funds and
Right.
things. So it's not,
That's a good point.
it's not as if, it doesn't have that hallowed role once did in the town, because we're actually understanding where our commitments are and making them.
I think the other partners have to understand this, Cam, because in the last, I would say 10 years, just to pick a number, but in the recent past, we have been able to take capital requests and just buy them out of free cash.
Yeah, we're not gonna be.
And we're not going to be able to do that anymore. But until we inform the departments that this source of funding has changed,
It creates more of a skill discipline, and I would say, maybe, now, this is the last year we can actually, or will actually use some free cash to reduce the tax rate.
Question, because don't forget, free cash is a year behind, right? So it's more exciting this year.
And we had already model of, weaning us off of that. But
it's a communication issue. I mean, if a department doesn't realize there's been a change, then why would they change their request pattern?
Yeah, well, the other part of it is that I'd say in the next few years we're in a bit of a transition state, going from trying to, rock paper play ball and all the rest, and going to a more reserve-oriented approach, so that we pay into a reserve monies to cover the cost of capital
Future
future cost, so that we're not struggling every year to scrabble again for $2 million for a fire truck, but that we've actually said, okay, this is going to be amortized over so many years, and we're going to set aside funds that will be the equivalent of that amortization, so that then the money is actually available. And I think that's a much clearer and smarter way to do it, but it's going to take us a while to get there because of the whole thing.
Right, so we, it's a different, because at first I started talking to Dawn about how I wanted to set up a fictitious account in Dover's school budget that would fully fund the circuit breaker, which is the state's going to listen. And then Molly said the same thing. She's like, you can't do that. And I said the same thing. And I was like, well, I just wanted to keep things on. Right, so the compromise was to put this cushion of the 500,000, keep it in the circuit breaker account, because you're allowed to keep up to 1 year of your previous year's circuit breaker funds in your circuit breaker.
Right. Do you know how much of a circuit breaker we're getting now? Or the magnitude? I mean,
It's really large.
I
So
know that,
it's
that's
like,
why.
it was, she said it was 400,000 a quarter. So 1.6 million.
That's kind of what I was. Well, it is what it is, the state has spoken, and
And I mean, we want the grants. I mean, we don't, you know, and they were basically saying, you know, this is really difficult for us to manage and to certify the circuit breaker to continue to do the grants. And she said she spoke to, you know, the regional treasurer and everybody who was, this is the way. It was an education for me, but you know, I was in the South. You can't get, yeah, it was.
and
She
with the year delay.
basically said, nice try.
Yeah, I mean, it was a year delay too. That's what, we had it as set up so that that would be a free cash ad. But I can remember when I was on the school committee, we had a couple moved in that were very large. And then the next year, somebody moved out.
Right.
And we had an $800,000 surplus.
Right.
And everyone came up with ways to spend it right then and there. We're like, time out, we have to get this back into town.
So, yeah, so it's just, and I, you know, I think it would be really helpful to get the picture of what's going on, what's going on. You know, they can't, they can't tell us, you know, they could basically say they're 12 kids and have a district.
Oh, that's all, yeah.
So just to call out some of the larger requests, so the asterisks here is 3. These are ones, as we mentioned, are currently in the budget. So one is we're calling the salary adjustment account. So we have 2 pending negotiations, as well as a pending compensation and classification plan review by a personnel board. And so we have currently, should I go back slide? You can see that 8.6 under general town operations, that's what's driving it.
It's not
That's what it's.
However, someone will tell you.
You're right. So that's important to point out. And, you know, if.
Like the selected salaries.
Right, there's some big raise. You know, when those contracts settle and when the study is done, that money would be distributed throughout the departments, right? It doesn't all live in the first line. But it needs to live somewhere now that makes the most sense. We did last year with DPW as well. There is some additional funding for public works. This is related to federal compliance and its consultant work for NISPs or MS4s, stormwater compliance, as well as federal EPA emission standards for the fleet. And I'll just skip for a second. Also, in there is conservation. They've asked for 32,000 additional consulting funds for the contracted conservation agent. As you may know, I think in the past 2 or 3 years they've had to do a reserve fund transfer because those costs have exceeded what was budgeted. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the letter section. I did put a placeholder on here. I'm sure Kim will talk about it, but the pedestrian safety working group continues to meet. There's potential some funding that comes out of that. So we do have no dollar amount, but just a placeholder so that if it does come, it's not a surprise. And again, these are not in the budget. The police department has requested a new executive assistant position. As you may or may not know, the police do not have an administrative or civilian position in the department. And the chief feels very strongly that's needed individually or independently, but in addition to, as we believe this calendar, by the end of this calendar year, we'll begin implementing our regional dispatch, and it'll be really important to have a face in person that is at the desk. He's also asked for, I had a hard time putting this in here, it's an additional sergeant position and or lieutenant position, because what he's looking to do is create a lieutenant position and then backfill that sergeant position. So that is not in there. And then also some additional funding for technology costs. The assessors had asked for a new part-time position and some associated expenses related to hiring a person and bringing someone on. The Council on Aging has asked for some additional hours for existing positions. They asked for 4 hours additional for both their office administrator as well as their program coordinator. In addition, they proposed the admin position has 5 hours a week that's funded out of a grant program. And their goal has been to move that position to be fully funded out of the operating budget. So it's 4 additional hours for that position, but it's actually 9 hours in the budget is what they have proposed. Again, 5 is already happening, it's just.
So is the grant just one of the grants?
No, it is, but it's really intended for programming and things like that. They've been using it for staffing costs, and it's just not ideal. So again, not suggesting this is doable, but it's part of the ask to start to look to move that position that we told we completely paid for our operating.
But the grant is free.
Correct, the grant is free. Yep, it would free those funds up for other uses. The ambulance, fire ambulance, the ambulance budget had asked for $114,000 in additional salaries for EMT staff and on-call pay. I know the chief and board of managers will talk more about this during their presentation, but the chief has done an excellent job of going on, I guess, a hiring spree in a good way, and to ensure that our ambulance is staffed and responding. They've also, which it is, they've also had great success by having on-call pay. Meaning people are here in the town and responding. And
So I will tell you, for the storm, they were at the fire station.
yes, yep. Which is very different than historical.
And everybody who was in home at the fire station.
And it's also allowed, having people at the fire station allowed the chief to fill his staff with more out-of-town EMTs. Because traditionally, it was mostly Dover residents are here and respond, and it's hard though to fill those spots. And so we need to be creative, and he's creating a lounge hangout space now, so we're not on call, we can be in the building. So,
They were concerned that the storm that people would have right?
right. The chief is here too, he's there. So, it's good.
That must have been a fun place to watch the people.
I just wanted again to not bury this later that comes up and surprise you. Right now we have a contracted arrangement for veteran services with the Canadian Veterans Agent. Basically, it's a side fee for him. He charges $1,000 a year. A veterans agent is required by state law. They provide services and veterans in your community with financial and other resources and assistance and referrals for medical things like that. We, for a variety of reasons, not discussed today, we are looking at other alternatives for that. And one thing we're looking at is clearly, no, it's not many times a full-time veterans agent, that's not good work, there's no need for that. But many communities participate in regional veterans districts. So there's one veterans agent that serves multiple communities.
Sort of what we're doing.
Sort of what we're doing, with the exception of it's a formalized agreement, and there's an expectation of service. So meaning, for example, there's one area, a community that serves 5 towns, and the veteran agent spends 1 day a week in every town, holding office hours in their community center, with Council on Aging, and providing those services. So we are exploring how to better serve our veterans and ensure we're complying with state law. They definitely pay more than $1,000 a year, so I just wanted to put that here. We don't know what that looks like. It's even doable this year, but I just think it's so important to do the right thing. And you know, it may be a number that pops up at some point when this year will next. So just for the radar screen. 2 things I just wanted to note that are not in the budget. One is DPW, as you may recall, has requested additional funding the past couple of years for paving. This year they withdrew that request. They received some additional supplemental Chapter 90 funding. It kind of feels it's more than enough to get through this year. So he's not requesting that additional funding. And the Board of Health has proposed combining 2 part-time positions, which actually be a reduction in their salary line. So they have 2 part-time benefit employee positions. This would be one full-time, so less hours, but the person would be here full-time, would be staffing. Right now, they're closed, they're late night, so we do think we just generally better customer service and for reduced costs. So it's not awful to say those words, so that's it. So we talked about this. I don't have a ton more to add, but it's a big ask. Noting the biggest ask here at DPW is a fuel island at 1.7 million. I will note two things that we are hopeful, or partly we know will come off. What we hope will come off is Kevin has a grant in for $450,000 culvert ask. And while it's not guaranteed, we're hopeful that comes to fruition and that will come off this capital budget if that does come to fruition. The other is at your next meeting, February 5th, you're going to have a presentation, an update on the intersection grant that you accepted for our traffic light intersection. That originally was they paid for the study, which we're going to present to you, design plans once we finalize those with you, and then $500,000 in construction costs. Kevin has advocated with them, and we're now up to $1 billion in construction costs, which is wonderful. So the $600,000 request. What's that? Yes. A tunnel. Yes, yeah. So that there's a $600,000 request that will be able to be reduced because we now have a $500,000 increase in the project cost that we can reduce grant funding. But it won't put us here. The reason for that is we anticipate when we present to you a plan, there may be a desire for some additional amenities that the grant doesn't cover that Dover would have to pay the difference on. So, for example, the grant covers, if we do new lights, they do the traditional silver kind of commercial looking poles, right, with the light tank, that sort of thing. Most communities, or many communities, particularly in our area, choose to go with like ornamental design. They're kind of black and pretty looking. Yes, yep. And if the town chooses to do that, we have to pay the difference in cost. So if I have no idea, if it costs $100,000 more, we have to pick that up. That difference is taken. So it's in there at 600. It'll definitely be reduced. We'll know more what that looks like once we come to you and talk about what the design looks like and what your thoughts are on that. We can do that too.
I also heard that Park Rec would reduce their costs.
So they've not officially, they discussed that with Capital, potentially phasing in their requests over multiple years. There's been no vote by the commission on that, but that's something we discussed as a possibility to spread that out. So that also could be an immediate reduction. So while the number was big, it might be something a little less, nothing too small. Get a little bit should all come to fruition. In this.
That's
that's what they're discussing for yes. Yeah. And I just had an email from
Then it would be $900. So it's the people going into this. Is the people over 600?
Well, it's the pickleball plus the repair of the water works over the Carroll Park. I had a question of Parks and Rec if they could consider separating those two out and maybe when one year doing the repair of the water infrastructure so there wasn't flooding all the time straight into where typical could be, and then maybe consider doing pickleball courts next year.
There's a possibility of the water.
So yeah, Cam, I just wanted to say, I think it was the parking lot
Yes.
repair, right? Yes.
It's a repair of the parking lot so that the drainage actually.
Oh, okay.
I check the moment if they don't do the repairs and put the pickleball courts where they want them, the water is just going to flow.
Understood.
So it does require repairs to its drainage system.
Gotcha.
I mean, they don't do the pickleball stuff, there's no need for this thing.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think we're agreeing that
We'll wait.
pickleball court is a nice to have. But I think perhaps it does make sense for us to attend to the ground as a separate sort of particular item. And it's something that maybe the township can simply take it over and not have parts of the do it.
That seems like a big deal.
So again, it's kind of how the responsibility, so this is Park and Rec property, and so that's why the request comes to them. Maybe, you know, perhaps that could be a discussion, because you know, infrastructure wise, it makes more sense to be PBW, but,
Yeah.
you know,
That's my sort of gut feeling. It sort of made sense to stop it later.
So me, I'm just thinking, maybe that's great. All right, well, I know we'll have more.
yeah, a lot more. Yes.
I'm trying to be good.
And then this is a summary of what you already saw. You know, noting that as presented, this has no use of cash for capital. And you know, our capital policy is to borrow for projects over $1 million. In this case, that would be the fuel option. To use 1.5% of the prior year tax levy to fund capital, and then all the remaining is funded. That's a current policy. And so again, this doesn't do any of that last piece.
Right, and we've acknowledged that.
Right. So again, it's not a true 3.5 million deficit, but that's because there's a big hole.
We need to highlight that. The other thing is we believe, based upon what I heard from the schools, is that our insurance increase is going to come in less than 15%, probably closer to 12%. So, and then.
Since what, that would be happening with 12%.
Right, and then Chris is also going along one of them, is going to analyze that line item, because we're projecting off of the budget, and see if the base is truly representative of what it costs to project. So they believe that maybe some savings.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah. So we will absolutely look at it. So,
Because more, in the school budgets, they're only showing a 9% increase, and that's because they've already factored in changes in the census that really didn't ways. So that's why, so that increase of originally is net. So you see it just.
Why they don't match it. Thank you, because I was wondering, okay, you listen.
Yeah. But, you know, that's sheer revenue.
So we talked about a lot of authority, which was great, just actually some of the letters. So, you know, as you mentioned, we will continue with the operating budgets, specifically with the warrant committee, you know, just talk about fixed costs, health insurance, and evaluating that both from just an increase perspective and also the assumptions we're making to build that budget. Continue to do that capital budget, and the College Center is available in time to help us this year with the funding mechanisms.
Do we have an update on possible delivery?
I don't today, no. But they are working.
I think that's a deliverable. Yes.
Okay, but are they able to meet our needs?
Chris didn't say that.
I think that's my guess. It's not saying no. They have to talk, yes and no. You talked about the growth estimate.
That's just what it is. I mean, we have looked, and we've looked over the last 5 years. It's on average.
What's the love?
So, I mean, you know, you drive down Devon Street, And right there, with your and that's not going to be new, and that's conservative. Those ones.
It's not my discussion because it's, I mean, like, it was.
That is the capital.
What is it? You know,
You know, it's
like, yes.
They're not perfect water drain. The water goes back into the steam and creates that radicals. That's what needs to be up there.
Yes.
So it's a matter of having Carl come here with a metal washers to jack up. But not to stop it.
Okay.
This whole house.
And, you know, the sort of values and that's where it is. We can,
Right.
so we let that stay there.
But most of these levers are small. The big ones are going to be putting into stabilization funds.
Right, and, right, you know,
And
there's
we might need to be a bit more patient on growing those stuff as well.
Everything's on the table. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
you know, if we already know that 2.5 is coming down, and it's not coming down, that's 2.5.
Right. That's why we can argue about the 50s conference, but yeah.
One of the things that Molly will be looking at is available balances from prior capital. They're not, it's going to be huge stuff, but as projects are completed, there's balance, and given the staffing issues that's closely, so there could be money that we could repurpose that's already been allocated, that it's not needed, we could repurpose that. Get a bunch of borrowing. Because we tried to go borrowing for capital for $1 billion, to bring that cost out.
Is that policy
No, this is, it's your policy.
It's not policy, it's just policy.
And that's,
millions around the world that's working from?
And to be really honest, those were the only big capital items we ever had were over money. I mean, prior to the last 2 years, we total would be somewhere in the 500,000 to 600,000 dollars. So, right, and that's right. Right.
Well, that would be resolved by rational capitalization.
Right. So, Chris and I talked, we talked about, so Joanne is putting together our debts. So we actually need to think about debt schedule and when things go and when things work out. And then, then we're going to work out what's a reasonable amount of debt we should be on each year for the next 3 years. Once or 5 years, once have a significant spike in cash. So those are the things because debt is, because of the way we do debt, the first few years, the principal balance is a lot higher than the total debt payment that's reduced. It's not the same thing for interest rate. Right. So we need to understand that. And because I think what we're going to come up with is this is what we can say.
So it sounds like a musical thing.
And then,
I think it's pretty good.
Carl really wants capital.
It's right to your point.
So it's the borrowing, a discussion with board policy wise, when, how we tackle exclusions. We talked about a letter is to not maintain our excess lending capacity, but that's a priority. Because there's really a fund debt outside of option capital. We talked earlier about, particularly the conservation department, commission, that we've reached the point where the applications and cost savings to put on all employees and contractors. Again, I do believe the dollar savings here, but it's also a good customer service of the type of person who wants to be, just good position. We talked about already what's the OPEB contribution and continuing to really look at. So I think a couple of things that I suggested to the water community, because of the last night, was one that worked well last year with a small working group, our finance team staff. I think Robin was on there, we did well of us just to kind of, yes. Just to kind of work offline between the meetings and move this along and see what's changing, what's working. I think having the departments fully working very helpful, particularly if that is additional requests that are people in the budget, what if any today. And then as I already mentioned, kind of, as we go forward for our next presentation, we'll have the free cash balance, the plan for the school balances, and those.
The question I think that,
We get it every year.
that's we do.
So, that's really the policy, so.
One small point I'd like to mention, Concom actually together $30,000 consulting fees. I recommend that to the Concom because in the past they've always done reserve fund transfers and it just wasn't transferred. I really suggest that we leave that in your budget and make it quite transparent.
Yeah, no, they speak with the contract agent, that makes absolute sense.
The reality is that it's not an increase in their expenses, they're paying back money anyway, it's just being recorded in the budget.
Yes.
So I think we went over that. We also put high level worksheet, the water, you can't put it in our too. And it just has the actual sample before those finally, so you can see.
The big one was like 7 feet back.
No, this is a summary of that.
So we put in capital requests, the departments of budgets, by one, and then some. And I think I would like to say thank you to Chris.
Yes.
So Chris, I would
We're trying to
pull this together. So we would be in a position where we can. But really just
Yeah.
May I ask, who is informing other boards and committees about positions in town
Warrant. So, yeah, warrant, budget, guidance,
The guidance letter was good, but when they did that, they had no idea, they didn't know where exactly we were going to be. And so I guess one, it's communication, and it's one thing to say, I would like to have anything on circle, but then I realized that, we're gonna pick like, okay, one to
Sure.
settle.
One of the communities is also looking at the ways of it, so who is responsible for the various research.
I was saying after the warrant saw this in the presentation, they will be going out with their respective committees.
And then we also internally to be great system about this. And again, I think departments and board and committees, what I feedback is, we feel these actions are important, they're bringing it forward, because that's their responsibility. We need to be safe, and we need to tell you that. But they're also understanding that, and push comes to shove, he may not be funded, and that they will work, right? He will do the best he can with it, but I think it's important to keep it forward as opposed to just hold it to what we do. I think that's it. Yes.
If you also say no to what we are,
Yes.
then yeah, it's that's
No.
The other thing I like, there's one who just requested the standard format presentation from the past. So, in the past, it was really never accepted about to the right decision, and it wasn't even, it was very difficult to go out and mind. Right. This way, the structure of Jackson. That's normal. It is not. And I think that's like.
The other thing we want is accept that if you included the questionnaire request in the library about something or something like that. The calculations that you need to take it out. Or
Right, so I think the rest of the meeting will go next week. The next item is, another one draft schedule.
Yeah, so this will be very quick. So I know, especially with the people in this room, given there's 2 people going around, most people have 3 people out. But on January 12th, the state declared Burlington back, the Burlington area back in the level 1 mild state. As you and I recall, back in September, the last time you acted and entered the drought status, you had, I don't know if it was how you did, but you had voted that we just aligned with the state as they changed for the season, and you had requested that we remove the signage on October 31st each year. We were still, so we did that. Since then, we've been out of the drought, into the drought, so we have no intention of putting this on. Don't have to put right now. Due to the snow, but that we will monitor this, and should the drought still be in effect or even increase in severity, as it gets to be April, we'll come before you, we'll put it back on the agenda, make sure it's public, announce it, and then send it to public, communication.
so I think what would be good is maybe Suzanne doing a flyer before text.
Yeah.
Because it's, and whatever the status is there, or you can put the status in, and also just remind people that she was a drought here. But, we need to give the applicant time to replenish, put tips on conservation. You don't need to worry before the grass.
And the other part, which is also a communications issue, is a lot of people that have wells think that this doesn't apply to that. And you have to really hammer that home on a regular basis, that they too are subject to the same constraints.
So maybe we could just post something together. Yeah. We did something before, you could probably post stuff.
Yeah, we could do that.
And Aquarium's website has some really good stuff on it.
Right, because they do this to their customers already, they're required by the state, if you model off a single by state. Yeah.
We'll take anything we can. Although I think Aquarium is not good at updating the site, because when we went out of the drought, they still said we were in the drought, and everyone clamored for Aquarium is supposed to be. And
It's October.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, especially when it's pouring in the spring.
That just,
and I just before we go, I just want to just publicly thank Steve here, Tim, for attending these meetings. I do try, but this particular one I was not available, so she updated us. Yeah, this is very, very good.
Right, and then the next item on the business is, to appointment procedure need to be personnel for its term in June 30, 2027. The term actually expired, or there's an expired, and she notified us that she stayed on to finish up the project, which is a huge help for our district.
Yes.
That's a good
Yes.
So we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So I think we will proceed to the need to the personnel for the term period to further. All in favor? Oh, I hope she has voice canceling. All right. It's kind of interesting. So the next, this is one of those items that just cracks me up that we need to do.
Yes.
And we need to vote to declare the fire department surplus items for disposal and or auction. So there are 20 obsolete portable and mobile radios. And then there's the 1939 engine model.
Well, let it go.
Not bad.
The one thing I am going to ask the general triple check is that the unit is in working order in good shape before the auction at all.
So their intention is to grasp information from when the engines here in service. So if you want to memorialize that contingent on receipt disclosure.
You get everything's perfect. Waiting for the good measure exactly.
So then I'm going to move to do 25 carbon radios. And in 1981, fire club, continuing upon the replacement club, and the in-service operation as surplus items.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Under that surplus policy.
So fast.
Alright,
I did appreciate the registration. I started laughing.
there's nothing like giving us all the support. Alright, so the next item of business is reviewing approval of the Board of Selectmen's 2025 town report. Which there's a copy here.
Here it is. This came in really hot. So if the board has not had a chance, I would suggest perhaps a motion to approve contingent on any comments you send directly to me, and then I can totally go.
Okay, that makes sense. Alright. So I'm going to move to approve the 2025 Board of Selectmen town report. As amended with edits to be provided to land sheets.
So it could be that difference.
By the end of this week.
We are already a little late in submitting it. One thing that's on the book for me is probably going to come back to you by door soon. So it could be that it's hopefully. Well, I can surprise. Thank you. By Friday.
Do I have a
Yeah.
I said so.
Alright.
And then update on the 1826 town meeting report.
Yeah, so this is just gonna be a sitting, I don't have much to update, nothing changed.
There are no citizens.
No citizens petitions, like the warrant, the draft articles remain as is. There's always the possibility of being pulled or things like that, but really no update, just keep it in front of you and, we'll keep it updated as we go.
And then the next item is to amend the goals and objectives.
Yeah. So again, a standing item, often, budget because the word we often do easy to force like an update. But, again, just, as you go through, you can start to see, throughout these events, for office hours, you're doing a lot of 99% positive feedback on online permitting. We had a department in each community involved in jokes. Without all we did was get complaints. Why is your online permitting? You can't believe this real in town. Now that you have it, people say, oh, I don't want to do it online. So you can't get it here.
It's amazing. I don't know what it's like. You can see everything. Like all your questions were answered.
Yes.
They're automatically repeated. You can see where the application stands. It's really good.
It really is. And, we continue to move that forward. All of the staff departments are on there. The next phase is non-staff boards and groups, like the Board of Appeals, for example. They did not make this first round because they have staff to kind of help keep it that lift. Their chair is also there's the church at the time, so we'll revisit that over the demo on our office. We do have annual permits that will be built on there. At some point, perhaps it'd be up to her to do certificates on permits and real quick. So it will just continue to expand.
For planning board perspective, at some point, to find the data that this is going to stop downloading everything because you can see everything open. So there's no reason for her to download everything. It's all there.
Well, I'm sure the most looking at that.
So that's why I'm doing it. If I'm the latest one, so I can see. It's really useful.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And even, for residents, you often get these public hearing notices, this is, you can come to the town of houses to see the plans. Not everybody wants to do that, they can do that. And so now you just go right on, and see everything. No, that's it, yeah. Or, you name it doing something, it's curious, right? Well, that's a different problem, that's right.
And then you say, now I know why they have that's
That's right, that's usually a good one, shop business. That's right.
This is a musical. So, these areas of fields have updates. Alright, I will, it's been a busy week for me. So we have the planning board, again, this is almost maybe the meeting goal. They had a state, a site plan review that is a little bit controversial this past meeting. Again, everything was documented, they had answers to everything, and it went really well. They also, the town planner went through the first draft of her ideas for simplifying the site plan review bylaw. So that was good. And she has some ideas to simplify it. Her plan is to meet individually with each member of the planning board to get their feedback on organizations that she's working with. Also, the housing task force, we paid a consultant to build, their work has started for the housing diversification plan. They put together a report that will link to our website that will have, community engagement associated with it. So we've got a draft document that we're going to look at and the beginning of tomorrow. So we want to make also progress there and then engagement part of this plan is going to start. It's pretty exciting. We also, I had a lot going on.
It's the round, you shut it right out.
And then Mike and I had a very good, we got some excellent feedback from the
Excellent. Thank you very much. Very much taken up.
so those are my updates.
Okay, well, being away, we have two updates. One of them is working with slugging through the investment policy.
So that's
Well, yes,
area of expertise.
on anything investment, it's really easy. But then it's all the mass general law, all the definitions. There's different types of accounts, some generate interest, some cannot. So we're trying to make it readable and usable and skipping a lot of things in the appendix because otherwise it's going to be hungry. But we're getting there. It's 2 airplane flights and oh yes. It's also a lever. Sustainability applied to 2 grants with climate action. And the big one was just received today. We got
Wow, congratulations.
that was all that was she literally submitted it like at 11:30 at night, the day of the coup. And I guess we're one of the last handful of towns in the Commonwealth that don't have a plan. So I think it's like huge one. It came back so easy. We got the maximum amount of $50,000. So the request for the sustainability committee or us just went from 75 to 25. So that's a nice dollar. And we may get a second grant, but that requires a match more involved. But that will only be up to 7,500. But still, have 60% of it's covered. And then I was talking to Carol, visiting on a different issue, and this is going to be one of the pillars for the master. So she was very excited that all the folks were lining up.
And how is it that the output from housing task force is also important? We actually we're going to make Melissa a person for that consulting person, so that we can make sure that we get what's needed from the output.
Makes sense. Now, there's another bonus that I was not expecting, but it's issued to the 50s, but the climate action, there's $50,000 to start working on climate action. So we will have, like, this sustainability is going to be head, it's 100 grand.
Yes, it's 50 for the, 50 for a project.
Right. Or, yeah, it's start projects.
Yes, yes, I think you're right.
So we will be able to, and that's a good one to coordinate with the rest of the town. What is the most important item to address? They're thinking about this. But I thought that was great news. Congratulating it's all wonderful. And it's a small level. We'll take care of 50,000 like that. So And then the next 10 days are the police negotiation, kickoff, 3 5 kickoff, the sustainability, building committee, and then the select. So,
He took the training rather than looking at him. He has some really good ideas. He's gonna be really great. I mean, he has no standing, just wants to do the right thing, he's looking to be about how he's thinking about things and comments and goals.
That's very, yeah, no, that's why I asked him.
It's a smart guy, very true.
James should be very happy, because there's gonna be conversations with people.
Exactly, and it's going to go forward. We'll look at it, and we're just listening. So we just do what's there. And we study, and we study. And,
He was so passionate about that.
oh,
He was asking a couple of questions. Something I didn't want to.
on the lunch, so that's good feedback. So, all right, Dan, well done.
Also, I mentioned before, I went to the MMA,
That's great.
Electric 51. I guess my overall assessment is I was a little disappointed. It's just a little too sort of all over the place, and it wasn't really a lot of guided discussions. There were a lot of presentations and visual description just to try to sell something about, and a lot of the staff were just like that as well. And we wanted the opportunity to sort of get with like-minded people on the issues. So I was a little bit disappointed. And then I sort of also thought it's great to hear that other towns are having very similar problems, not knowledge. And there were, of course, lots of high-profile presentations, like a presentation by the Governor and Kim Bristol also presented, and Mr. Warren and Ed Martin also made presentations. They were all sort of rather political type things, and wasn't a lot of preparation or focus on town issues like that. The speaker who impressed me most was the head of another town, Michelle Hill, who
City.
another city, it's big town. Yeah, who sort of showed much more empathy and encouragement, and he was saying we have to move together, and so I found her much more empathetic than the others. Maybe it's just better sort of more politician. I don't know.
But he feels
Yeah, exactly. That was the thing.
Looks like paper every day, which
So, all in all, I enjoyed going. That's not so keen. Next year, we'll see.
No, I just had this thought. I wondered if we could contact some of the selectmen of surrounding towns and say, do you want to have a round table?
Yeah, that seems an interesting thing.
Just,
Particularly on the sort of ones that are more our size. I mean, that's not easy, but to make people that.
although it's still finding that we get more selectmen really helpful.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
How can it hurt you?
We all are facing the same issues. Yeah, maybe it will be a catalyst for some regionalization of some things that save us all.
One good idea, that's
Right.
worth it.
Yeah, but the one committee started about 3 or 4 years ago, regular liaison meetings with the third one plants, and I found that to be very useful. It's like I mean, we aligned ourselves on expectations there, what the challenges respective towns and place, and the useful means of communication. The next
Find me a town that is.
Right. And the next to the substance I involved in is the District Safety Committee. And two of our members, the two partner citizen members, John Nichols and Mr. Camilla, have drafted recent recommendation of things that could be done throughout the schools to improve safe development. And they did it, I think they did a good job of it. And so we'll try to get together a meeting to have that happen and expose and lots of other things happening. It's been really difficult to get it together. It looks like it's Monday. With the schools involved as well. That was part of the problem that the schools weren't able to attend
Okay.
It's kind of important.
Exactly. And actually, Berkeley College wrote a lot of things today, so we can't do it. It's a plan to go, and if you can't do it, there's much point in working with the person. It's really revolves about that school. We've also, in the background, got a sort of dual track approach that people also making recommendations to the government board on policies for evaluating supplements in the town. That hasn't been updated for several years, and everything is like sort of talking and big like press for started so using really clear set of guidelines on how to do that. So that's something that's they're contemplating doing as part of the school. Yeah, right. But that would cost us illegal to the button or not right.
It's been a likely issue in the past, it's going to be a likely issue in the future.
Right. So if you can set up criteria for evaluation and prioritization, I think it becomes less political and more about, sorry, this is our policy. And that's what becomes much easier to handle. But, it really points to the sidewalk over near the schools. No, the regional schools. It's another one, yeah. Yes, that's, yeah.
It's just,
Outside of the together, I do that's, it got lots of down in. Yeah. But in any case, I'm seeing some very positive outcomes in that future on the mission. So, I think it's really quite impressed by the participation of citizens on that.
and like for even when you were not first,
Yeah, and they don't have an axe to grind. They're really sort of, but and also to think broadly about it, not just in their own particular investment, what might be done. So I'm very interested. Then Concom met last week and we saw a product at that meeting where Concom has come up with an assessment of the 40B project in Strawberries.
Yes.
And I guess I'm not quite clear on what the next steps are after that.
so all committees at the planning board with the same thing, and send it to my colleagues, and put together a response.
Yeah, we'll compile all of those and kind of see it on the top.
And legal consultants and the
Correct. Yes.
And they've also attended a couple of local trustees meetings, nothing recently important here, but it's certainly an education for me, both at the Concom and the library, just to see if we can get that sort of time that I haven't been engaged in the past, that's only quite a lot. And the Concom has a lot of issues with its violations, particularly of building procedures, some of them is a few units, others on fees flat, so I guess that seems like
If they get caught, it's part of their doing business.
Yeah,
That's gotta stop.
yeah, because it's not around them. Yes, local,
Right?
So, I think we have a most of mine. I was just going to talk about the start of the tail, but you can get that response like that. 30 seconds. Yeah. So responses we do technically yesterday to us, but I'm hoping to think of things were just playing, but they just met one. So they communicate. Yes, very much. I think one meeting that just did come up is that Mark Maloney's working together, they're working together to continue to do that forward, so we'll keep you updated. We had a meet and greet with the Massachusetts Inspector General, Jeff Shapiro, here at the townhouse. He's making an effort to visit all here in the communities. So we met with the finance team, HR, DPW. So the Inspector General, the only thing we gave you a lot, really, we interact with them just determinate. So we gave them a lot of good feedback on what we feel that can be updated with procurement, some of what is very overdated. Particularly given how costs have soared so much, that, looking at that is very supportive of the value in that, revising all of that, things like that. He deals with fraud. Which fortunately we've not dealt with in others, but it's good for modeling, because we've got Pat there, and Joanne, Chris, we speak to them. And then lastly, something new this week, which could be helpful to us in the future, is I'm sure you're familiar with MSP, which is the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which provides funding for school projects. The Inspector General has been an advocate for municipal buildings, particularly public safety projects. So as towns want to reach public safety buildings and complexes, there must be state funding to assist with that, which can just be a huge change.
That's a good way for the state to get that. That's our retirement.
That's right. Yeah, so we're really big advocate for that. So we just, express our support with things, but also encourage them to do this. So that's, it's nice to have a chance to meet, make a face. Now, we ever need them, we can, place the phone.
You were now 170.
That's right. And then lastly, just want to compliment everyone who responded during the storm. DPW was out for many hours. We were able to. Well, that's right. It's really hard. Trying to get them the rest they need so that they're not driving tired, dangerously, but also trying to keep the roads open and sidewalks clear is really a challenge. So, for the public, I think we've got a lot of positive feedback. We're continuing to finish, so we're working on some of the sidewalks and trying to knock down. The first goal is to get the storm for road, but we pull up to intersections and try to see the continue to work on those and kind of bringing those piles down to be more visible. No, so just
The next 10 days.
so really appreciate all of their efforts. As Ron mentioned, both fire and police and extra staff in. Local chiefs were here throughout the storm to assist to deal with their staffs.
Your response to the citizen who's worried about
Well, so that's the last piece. No, it's perfect. So for the public benefit, for many years, our police chief has served as a emergency management director. That we didn't have a full-time function. It was very ill-placed, and as you know, he appointed a fire chief as the new emergency management director. As Chief Vince used to say, "I go through whatever you want. When I go to these meetings, I'm the only police officer." So it's a much better place for it. And Chief Smith, as one of his first roles here, has developed the standard operations to go over the reporting center or charging center outside of the Google business app. So in the past, we've advertised this building, the library, Now, the community center is open if it's during working hours, people charge the license. We also offer during hot days, people with AC. This new procedure will allow us to open the community center in particular off hours, but to be clear to the public, only when there's extended hours. You know, in a snowstorm, we don't want people driving, so we're not just opening the place to hang out and stay in the house, or to send the kids, so we're not home, that would be great. Yeah, and we were very, so Dean works on a great press release and graphics, we're very clear on that. Super guys, you know, extra history. But we have this in place, and now we can plan. You know, again, if I was there for an hour or so, we hope people can make do, but anything extended, if you get the call, because we do as well. So I think I appreciate Steve Smith working on that, you know, on staff, you know, DPW, again, during a storm that we're the main roads and the side roads, parking lots for mass, so community with them, so that we can focus on the parking lots and the users. Just great team with all around. We'll continue to develop that, you know, looking to set up maybe an internal emergency management team and kind of formalize that so that when other things come up, we'll prepare for that. So the chief is the emergency management director. I believe is the official title. He serves. Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
It was suspended.
Yeah, and I know she came out and said, you know, emergencies that they would go to
Saying that I'm making them, yeah.
So that's all I have.
So then the last thing is the consent agenda. And that is to approve IRS 256 standard mileage reimbursement from 2.5 cents to 72.5 cents. Approve acceptance of expenditures by including acceptance of expenditures of next department participation in recreation of this year, all the capacity needs for events and grants. To approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor? So now that concludes the open session of the meeting. So I'm going to move the board to executive session, not to return to open session, to the purpose of personnel section 21A to conduct strategy discussions and preparation and negotiation of non-union personnel as an open meeting discussion may be detrimental to the negotiating position